Hey guys, this is Undercover Dudes all the way from down under, and today I'm going to be suggesting an idea to fix building in Fortnite Battle Royale. Now I'm not taking credit as the founder of this idea, as I'm sure there's tons of people that have been thinking exactly what I'm about to say, but I just wanted to go and collect my thoughts in a video and see what other people had to think about it. The essence of this idea is very simple. Lower the material cap and increase the farming rate. So for example, lower the cap for each material to 500 or 300 or 400. The specific number doesn't really matter, but let's say we'll reduce it by at least half. But to go and compensate for this, double or triple the farming rate. But let's go and talk about why I think this is a good idea. In my opinion, the best part of Fortnite Battle Royale was the early seasons, where people built because they wanted to go and fight. It was build, fight, farm, build, fight, farm. Not right now where people just continually build to go and win a 1v1, and in the end, if you want to actually go and win the match and get a victory royale, you're better off just camping and not utilizing your skill because you're just going to use all your mats, but we'll talk about that later. Structures are too easy to shoot down, there's massive amounts of useless building, it's hard to farm, and it's really not that fun. Example, two good players fight. They both use nearly all of their materials. And what happens at the end of it is one person goes and wins, and the person that wins is at a disadvantage against anybody they go and fight next, as they need to go and farm up a ton in order to go and get the materials up to a state where they can go and effectively 1v1 again. At this point in time, if you had 100 materials at the end of a fight, which is quite common, versus somebody with 1,000 that's just going straight for you, you're basically done. They just keep building and building and building, they get high ground and spray down with an SMG or shoot RPGs at the ground, and you know there's nothing you could have done because farming is just a pain and it's incredibly slow. It should be that fights are shorter and more calculated, but getting your mats back up afterwards is very easy, i.e. by hitting trees and getting lots of mats back with an increased rate, or by even hitting your own structures to get half the mats back. That means that the better player can go and farm up super easily after they go and win the 1v1 duel, and they can continue to go and win fights, instead of right now where it's just better to go and camp and camp and camp and not take any risk, because if you go and take a risk, you get into a massive build battle, and in the end of it you have no mats, you're basically dead. Having this system would go and reduce camping as well, as anybody that wants to go and camp until the very end is forced to either not use their mats, just sit around in a bush or whatever until late game, which is very risky, or camp, and then when they run out of mats very quickly, they have to go and put themselves out in the open to farm, or they have to go and kill other people to go and get their mats, and that in itself goes and solves the camping issue. Now yes, camping is a strategy, and yes, people go and utilize it, but it should not be the optimal strategy. It should be that if you want to be an aggressive player, that should be incentivized, going and playing the game how it was designed, to go and fight other people and to go and build and be in combat. That should be the optimal strategy, rather than just sitting around and waiting for the last 5 people. The changes I talked about before would not only knock down camping a few pegs, but would also go and make build fights more dynamic, more active, because people would have to be actually smart about their building. I'd have to go and realize, I don't have that many mats, I have to go and make smart decisions, rather than just continually building and building and building mindlessly until someone just runs out of mats, which is just a boring way to do build fights. Now let's move on to a point that I think a lot of people will try to go and make, and that's the whole skill ceiling. They say if you go and cut mats in half, that means the skill ceiling for the game will be lower. And yes, but I think it's actually good, and let me explain why. The definition of pure building skill in Fortnite would be less of how fast can you go and build, how can you just absolutely dominate somebody with your really fast building. It would be more so how smart can you go and build while being an expert aimer. I know some quote-unquote pros would be like, but my builds, but let's be honest, building right now is a complete crutch for some players, and if people can go and win games by just building and camping and killing somebody with explosives and SMG spam, that means the game is in a bad state, which it is. I've watched competitive Fortnite, and I can say that with an air of sarcasm because it's disgraceful to the word esports. Esports is a fantastic thing, and Fortnite competitive just completely goes against it. It's legit just farm, camp, and then use campfires until someone wins. It's boring, skillless, and rewards playing passively. Having the mat limit and doubling the farming rate won't magically make this whole camping thing go away, but it will go and help. And I'm not saying that camping is something like super bad and that it should be just eradicated, but it's so prevalent right now that it's really the optimal strategy. It should be used in times where you want to go and calm it down and assess the battlefield. But in the end of it, it's a game, it's a PvP game. You have to go and fight other people. And if you're not doing that whole fighting element and you just go and win a game with 0 kills or 1 kill, what's the point of even calling it a battle royale? It's just a camping royale. Now, this nerf / buff would not only go and help competitive Fortnite because it would be so much more interesting to go and watch, it would be so much more skillful, it would be so much more action-packed, but it would go and help casual Fortnite as well, as there would be less massive build battles, more smaller fights, and less using RPGs as crutches, less bullshit kills basically. Of course, building would still be a massive part of the game, and that's what really puts Fortnite on the map compared to PUBG and Islands of Nine and so on and so on, the building. But when it's such a massive part of the game that it goes and dwarfs everything else, that makes it incredibly soul-crushing for new players that go and get introduced into it. There's a very big transition period where people have to learn how to build, and at this point, the gap is so large that people just go and play 50 versus 50 because they don't want to go and get crushed in solos. Solos at this point in time is a complete sweatfest because as soon as you go and land one shot on an enemy, they go and build the Eiffel Tower because they have the mats. It should be that if you go and get shot, you have to make a decision. Okay, I only have so many mats. Should I go and just spend a few of them, go and get a little bit of cover, and then go and use the rest to take on the other person in a fight? Or do I just want to go and take a really passive position, actually use most of my mats trying to go and make a campy structure? Those type of decisions, you don't have to go and make them right now. You can just keep building and building and building. And the fact that there's no repercussions for going and just spamming builds is something that I think really needs to be addressed. Now let's go and say that this change goes through, where the whole building cap is cut in half and the farming rate is doubled. Well, what do we go and do with explosives? Because at this point in time, explosives are in such a bad state. The whole point of Epic going and buffing explosives was to go and knock down building, because they didn't want to go and touch the whole building cap, because if they touch the building cap, the pros go and get mad because my skill ceiling, as I said before. But in the end of it, we've talked about how it actually would go and help the game if there's other changes involved. So, what do we go and do with the explosives when this change comes through? And I say when because I think it's an inevitability that something like this has to go and occur in order to go and bring the game back to a state where people actually really enjoyed it, i.e. Season 1, Season 2. So, explosive changes. Have it so a player can only go and equip one explosive item at a time. One RPG, one nade launcher, one C4, not all 3 at a time, not 2, which is actually quite a viable thing. Nade launcher into C4, very viable. So with that said, continue on with the nerfs. Keep the cap at 13 or whatever, or reduce it to 10, somewhere around that area. And then keep explosive damage against buildings the same. And then go and revert the materials health nerf. So there's not too many changes. Buildings are stronger, but there's less massive structures. So the structures that you do go and make won't come down as easily. So let's move on to against players, because I feel like that is a bit of a pain point in the game right now. People just using the RPG as a crutch and the nade launch as a crutch because they can't aim. So they just spam explosives in order to go and get wins. Make it so explosive damage against players is significantly reduced. Make the RPG, the nade launch, and C4 be primarily a building destruction tool, not a cheap way to go and get kills. These weapons will be viable at taking down structures, but with the reverted building health and the low explosive cap, people will still be able to go and effectively build against it to an extent. Now, to be honest, if the building cap got lowered, I feel like explosives would have to be nerfed even more than what I'm suggesting here. But to be fair, I personally want explosives nerfed because I feel like they're super anti-fun and definitely not a good part of the game in the first place. Getting killed by a C4 is great if you're chucking the C4 because you don't realistically need to do anything. You just chuck it and then you detonate, oh, I got a kill, that's great. But on the other side, if you get hit by a C4, it's like the worst thing in the world. You get hit by an RPG, it sucks. You get hit by nades, it sucks, because no matter, you just keep building, you just can't really get past it. It's just a continued barrage of damage and damage and damage, and you just can't really build against it. And that's the whole thing where building goes and falls down. Building is so great in some areas and so bad in other areas. It should just be good overall. And so just neutralizing everything to an extent where building is part of the game, but it's not the overwhelming part in one area and just completely insignificant in another area, especially when people just spamming miniguns and spamming machine guns as well. Go and keep it at a neutral state. So some things not too strong, but also really, really good in the right hands if people can actually go and utilize it properly. So overall, reduce the camping, increase the farm rate, make it so farming isn't a chore and that build battles aren't a chore. The game, in my opinion, was fun where shooting was the driver and building was the passenger, with farming being something quick and easy so we can get back into the reason why we're playing Fortnite in the first place. My favourite part of Fortnite right now is the early game, where people have builds, but they're not super significant. They're just building for the sake of, I want to go and get shots off and I want to go and kill you. That's my favorite part of the game right now. And mid game's not too bad as well. I hate late game because it's just a snore fest of people just playing the game like they're not putting anything on the line to try to go and win it. And hopefully you guys understand my points. I would absolutely love it if you could go and post in the comment section below about your opinions about building Fortnite Battle Royale, explosives, etc. And hopefully we can have a little bit of a discussion. If you enjoyed this video, you want more commentaries like this, make sure to go and hit that subscribe button, make sure to go and hit the like button. But other than that, it's Undercover Dudes all the way from down under.